Hello, and welcome to this week's installment of What's the Librarian Reading? My name is Becky Pfile, and I am the Adult and Teen Services Librarian at the Ripon Library. This week we are talking about The Library of Lost Things by Laura Taylor Namey. It is a young adult fiction, which happens to be my particular favorite genre. This book was Laura Namey's first novel. It came out in 2019, and for being a first novel, it was really great. In this story, we meet Darcy Wells, and Darcy is the main character of the story, as she is a senior in high school and lives with her mother, who is a hoarder. As we go through the story, we meet Marisol, which is Darcy's best friend, and Marisol is half Cuban and half Mexican. And she is a young woman who is very self-confident and ends up being a best friend that any of us would want. Darcy works at a bookstore, and her entire life, books have been the backbone of what keeps her sanity. Books help her to deal with her mom's mental health issues. They help her to deal with being in a single parent home. And she takes books with her everywhere she goes. And she works at a bookstore. The bookstore she works at is called the Yellow Feather. And connected to the Yellow Feather is Top's Wig Emporium. The owners of the two shops were previously married, and they were married for about a year, about 20 years ago, and they had a terrible relationship. And instead of dealing with the building at their divorce, they decided they would split it in half and have two different shops. However, they have a terrible relationship still. And some humorous tidbits throughout the story is the relationship between the two store owners. But they both play a particularly important role in Darcy's dealing with her internal conflict. Darcy is realizing that she has hidden much of her life from her friends and other people in her attempt to hide the mental health issues that her mother has. So she has never let anyone in. But the bookstore gives her an out into the public. And in it, she finds peace and solace and people that love books as much as she does. And at Top's Wig Emporium, the owner, Tess, Darcy will go over there during her breaks, and Tess will put wigs on her and give Darcy an opportunity to sort of live outside the books and to pretend that she has an adventurous life that she wishes she truly had. One day, Darcy goes over to the Top's Wig Emporium, and Tess, the owner, isn't there, but there is a young man in there who has graduated from high school that she knew. They knew each other, but they weren't close friends. And he was in there doing some construction work. So we meet him. His name is Asher Fleet. And the book chronicles his particular story also. He has an interesting story in that he had plans to become a pilot, and he was going to a special school, but got into a car accident. He made some bad choices when he was a senior. He's older than Darcy. When he was a senior, he made some bad choices and got into a terrible accident, and that changed the trajectory of his life. But as his story unfolds, we see that sometimes blessings come in ways that we wouldn't expect. So we have Asher's story going, and we have Darcy's story going, and the two come together. And then we start to see a romance build between Darcy and Asher. But I think some of the main things that stuck out to me in this story that really I connected with was the relationship between Darcy and her mother. Her mother has mental health issues, and Darcy talks about how they have dealt with those. So as a hoarder, her entire house is full of tubs and totes of things that Darcy's mom has bought. She works and does get out of the house, and Darcy says that if you saw her out in public, you would not ever know that she was a hoarder. But coming home, she uses all of her paycheck to buy things that she stores in the house. So it's filled, the house is filled from floor to ceiling with these tubs and totes. And one of the agreements that Darcy and her mom had was that her mom could have the entire house, but she would not store her stuff in Darcy's room. And her mom has always honored that commitment. Until one day, Darcy comes home and she's got things going on in her life that outside of home that she's dealing with. And she comes home and goes into her room and she's dealing with these things emotionally and doesn't notice the box in her room. And her mom had begun storing her things in her room. So I connect with this story not because of being a hoarder or having a teenager that like I don't particularly connect with the characters in that way, but I think any teenage woman or any mom can connect with these characters in how they deal with their interpersonal relationships and how they have this sort of give and take in understanding that we all go through things and we have to decide how we're going to go through them, if we're going to go through them together or if we're going to have to go through them separately. And so it's a really beautiful story of this mother and daughter dealing with mental illness in their family. And I think any young woman or mother can connect with this story in that way. Darcy, Marisol, and Asher become a friend group that I think any person would be jealous of. Marisol and Asher help Darcy to see the behaviors that she's doing may not be so healthy and may be preventing her from experiencing life and being vulnerable with other people. And Darcy kind of fights with them when they suggest these things. But it's a beautiful story of how Marisol and Asher look beyond her faults and are committed to being her friend and helping her to mature and reflect on herself and how she has been hiding from herself and needs to do some personal healing as well. It's a great friendship story. One day when Darcy's at work, she stumbles upon a Peter Pan book. And this Peter Pan book has someone's diary in it. They, whenever they would read a page, like that day, they would write their feelings and their thoughts and whatever in between the lines and down the margins and across the top. And Darcy becomes infatuated with this book. And she tells us bits and pieces of the book as she goes through the story and how it connects and relates to her life. I mention it because it's a very integral part of the story, but one that I have to leave as a teaser because if I told you any more about it, it would be a spoiler. But it's definitely an interesting and fun aspect to this novel. Anyway, so this was Laura Taylor Namie's first novel. It came out in 2019. And like I said, for being a first novel, it was written very well and made me look forward to reading something else that she might publish. And I happened to look today and discovered that she published a book this month, it was on November 10th, 2020, called Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. Laura Namie is Cuban American, and I think she connects with Marisol in this story, and I'm guessing will connect with the Cuban girl in the Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. This book, The Library of Lost Things, is available on the online catalog. There is a short hold list on it that I saw today, but it is definitely worth putting on hold. If you go to your account online, log in with your library card number and PIN number, and search for the Library of Lost Things, and you can place a hold on that to be picked up here in Ripon. I also noticed that the Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow is owned by Ripon, and there is also a short wait list on that as well, but it's a new book, and I'm sure will be just as fun to read as this one. I wanted to draw attention to my giraffe over here and the craft that I have in front of it. I wanted to briefly show this to you. This is a teen paint night that I have planned coming up hopefully in January, but I wanted to show you to give you an idea of something that we have coming up soon to enjoy during the winter months. So watch for that. Watch for a live virtual teen paint night where we will do a canvas painting similar to this, and that should be coming up hopefully in January. Thank you.